just bastards that do well. I got fuck all sleep last night, mainly because I was drinking alcohol, and I don't drink much normally, but I drank last night. I felt I needed it, you know. Uh, no, I didn't. I had a curry last night and had some beers, and 2 beers led to 4 beers, and you know how it is, 4 beers exponentially inclined. And so I have a little bit of a hangover, but it was worth it. Not really hangover, just I didn't go to bed. I was up till like 4 o'clock, and I had to go to work today. And stunning weather though. The weather in Ireland has been incredible lately. Uh, it's like going to be 18 degrees today, sunshine. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's just perfect spring weather. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about today, so you can put your kettle on. You can put your kettle on. 1 lump or 2, baby. Yeah, whatever. A hangover makes my singing voice better. Speaking of the singing voice, that song that I wrote and sang and played, great bass line, played a fucking killer bass line on it, is that with my friends from Vera Violent. Uh, the refrain at the end, we turn the dead into butter and bread. I'm going to be extrapolating, explaining that, fleshing that out literally a bit later. So if you're eating food, this is probably not a good video to be eating your breakfast or your scones. I'm going to have a scone later with tea. The scone porn is underrated. All my comfort angels go mad when I post pictures of me having scones and tea. Dainty little girly cups, yeah, in Irish tea rooms. But anyway, so there's a few things to talk about. The first one being, you probably heard that the drummer from the Foo Fighters, this chap was only 50, was found dead. Now, I don't know what the circumstances of this are yet, but considering the machinations surrounding the needlecraft, it's fair to speculate that he is part of what Christian Morris calls the loyalty scheme. By that means less people. And he's died of climate change. Climate change is the code for the ultimate bad reaction to the needlecraft. So, assuming he's died of climate change, it'll be pretty ironic considering that band was only playing to needlecrafted audiences. I remember when I was going down, they said they would only play to needlecrafted audiences. And there was a bit of a joke around the time that 2 of them got sick with the ping pong after saying that. But now it looks like, and then Dave Grohl, they're a shit band, the Foo Fighters. They really are shite. Musically, they're crap. The soulless, bland, like it's almost like the worst kind of suburban rock. You know, like people who don't really know about rock and roll, forming a rock and roll band and playing music for people who don't really have a soul for rock and roll. It's just a heavy rock. It's just they're just nothing. They're a sonic. There's a sonic indifference. Having said that, it's very sad that this chap died. I mean, I'm not putting them, but the band are crap. Anyway, this Dave Grohl guy. Anytime any videos of theirs that ever pop up when I'm playing music are nearly always them doing covers of other people's songs, like Rick Astley and other things like that, and Kiss. And every second word out of Dave Grohl's mouth, he's a badass motherfucker. Like that's all he can say. That's all he can say. Like, it's so cliched. It's so goofy and cliched. And I saw a video of him literally singing sonnets of love to Obama's face in the White House. It'll make you sick. And so he's pure establishment. Pure establishment. So it was no surprise that they were one of the more extremist needlecraft celebrities. And he even did a song with that Mick Jagger guy. You know, it's like, get your fucking needle, stick a fucking needle in your arm, whatever the fucking thing is. Yeah, ooh, fucking needle. Yeah, whatever the fuck that was, right? So it would be the ultimate irony if a member of that shit band has been taken out by the climate change. They should change their fucking names to from the Foo Fighters to the Kamikaze Pilots, if that's the fucking case. So that's it would be unbelievable. We'll never know the truth, and they're still good. It's amazing how it's physically active people. Like there was a top cyclist in Ireland died of climate change this week. A young guy. I mean, he's like Tour de France level. The usual thing. Unexpectedly passed away. You know, it just never stops. And and has and even those who, this is like, if you watch my videos and you have taken the transubstantiation of the needlecraft, and by that I mean the three, it seems to be like this. The first one didn't really have an effect on people except making them feel ill, and yet some people did some people, not a lot, but some did die. Okay, and that was probably the same amount that you'd have in the same percentage that you would have the normal reactions to needlecrafts, except that there were so many people they were taking this in their millions, so it's just those numbers seemed inflated. But once they had that, I know people that had the first one and said, "Fuck, I'm not getting any more," and they turned out fine. They were fine, and even the second one, I know people. It was the foghorn leghorn that seems to have been the coup de grace of the whole thing. And if you're watching, remember this: if you're watching this from day one, and I started doing the Rona Chronicles, and remember, I don't give a fuck about popularity or how popular my videos are. The Rona Chronicle thing. Although, thank you for listening and record numbers and stuff like that. I mean, but generally that's not why I do this. I was confused, and I was trying to work my way around what is really going on in the world, and I still haven't fully accepted that it's just. I mean, I'm still the back of my mind. I still have this thing about the comet or a meteor, or something from space that they're not telling us about, and I just cannot shake that from my consciousness. That could be a factor. But from day one, I said to people, if you're my friend and you decide to take the transubstantiation of the needlecraft, especially if you're forced into it by your job or whatever, or for love, we're still friends. I'm not going to judge you that way. I don't, but I'm worried about you. I'm fucking worried about you. So we now know, in some ways, it might be a blessing that it's that this that the excuse me, fucking pollen, that the foghorn leghorn is related to genes. Never fucking again. I'm just not used to drinking anymore. I never really was a heavy drinker anyway, but I'm just not used to it. The curry was great though, but the foghorn leghorn, because it's genetic, there might be a blessing in that, because let me tell you for a fact that epigenetics is real, and you can change that. I mean, epigenetics is genetic changes caused by that are causation. The causations are non-hereditary, or they're caused by factors, meaning that they're caused by thoughts, external factors, that they are not fixed. This is why couples who love each other start looking like each other and things like that. You can change your epigenetics. So those of you who've gone as far as the foghorn leghorn and start visualizing the needlecraft genes being eradicated by the stronger genes. Think of something like visualize the genes of your ancestors as warriors with swords and charging across the fields, hacking down these orc needlecraft genes. Think of that, draw pictures, imagine it constantly. That, the stuff that I was born with from my ancestors, the sanguine gnosis, is so far more powerful than what the foghorn leghorn has done to me. Do that. Do that. I think I nearly bet money that would work. And put up a fight. Fight, And I said, we're still friends. I'm not going to judge you. If you're the kind of one who got it and was like calling other people names and laughing at them, I'm not your friend. And if you're the kind of ones who laughed at people and dropped dead from the foghorn leghorn or any others, well, fuck you. But, not that I'd dance on your grave or anything like that, but I'd, it's like you pay, you play. You play, you pay, whatever. So, I don't know anything about the guy from the Foo Fighters drummers, but maybe he was a very nice man. I'm sure he was. But like Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest, I mean, as soon as they got the needlecraft and as soon as he started the US tour, he's dying in hospital. And it just goes on and on. And so I would say if you've gone as far, now remember, a drummer would be the most physically active member of a band as well too. If you've gone as far as the foghorn leghorn and you're involved in physical activities, maybe you should think about taking things a bit easier. Which brings me to another thing, participation. Well, now that everything is opened up again in most places, I have a friend who works at Alexandria Palace in London. He's just like, he just works, he's an electrician. And he works on they have a lot of conferences and exhibitions there. And it's in London. And they have all the big trade fairs and everything there. It's like the NEC in Birmingham, and it's the one in London. And so he was telling me that nobody, compared to previous years, was going to the events. Because he contacted me because there was a big model show coming up, and he says, "Look, I can get you in before the crowds, and you can see the trade stands and all the new kits and everything. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Nah, I can't go to things this year. Thanks anyway." But he contacted me again and said, "You wouldn't believe it. Ever since the exhibitions and the trade fairs and conferences started, there's nobody at them compared to previous years, where you might have had at the hobby shows and the arts and crafts exhibitions, 10 people deep at the trade stands or at the stalls or at the exhibition demos." He says nothing, empty. And the manager first put it down to, well, it's probably people afraid of the ping pong. But he said it's not. He says they're just not interested. He said and the fact is, and he was talking to one of the trade guys. There was like a craft fair, and this guy was selling. This guy was representing some company, was selling some new modeling clay or some shit. And he said, "This is a disaster for you guys." And he says, "No, sales haven't been affected." He says, "Everything is at mail order now." He goes, "Participation seems to have dropped. Hobby clubs, all kinds of clubs where people participate in them, all kinds of things, like, a martial arts, boxing, everything. There's far less numbers in them than there used to be. And it's not that everyone is sick or dead. They're just not. It's the whole thing. This is the foghorn leghorn seems to have taken their spark of life or something and reduced their. And it goes across things like restaurants. Restaurants that you'd have to book in advance, like a month in advance. You can just walk in now and get a table. And the only thing I've noticed that has really, in Ireland, has stayed stable is sports. in soccer and everything, in rugby and everything else, stadiums are packed. And maybe because that's outdoors, but there seems to be any kind of indoor participation thing. People aren't going to it, or anything, even outdoor clubs. I don't know what's going on there, but it's interesting. It's almost like people just whether the lockdowns made them antisocial, or whether the the booster has kind of made them apathetic and taken away their zest for life. I don't know, but it's weird. It's weird. And he was saying, you want to see, since there was some years, some of these exhibitions were famous for being packed. He was telling me the Alexander Palace. He says, nothing there now, nothing. He says, you can just walk around at your leisure at all of them. And like you said, the guy was from the company, from the art, from the, I think it was like FEMA, one of those companies. He said, sales are as big as ever. They're selling mail order. It's all over it's through Amazon and everything else. So it's not that the people are dead or anything. It's just that they're not going out and doing things like they used to in indoor settings. So that's a weird one. So the Rona Chronicles thing kind of continues by default, doesn't it? Just when you think we're kind of free of the fucking shy, it comes back in other ways. Another one. It was back to the Ukrainian situation. Some Irish people have actually, when you hear this one, some Irish people have actually gotten wise, and they figured out that the official bodies bringing in the war refugees are the ones smuggling in people who are not from Ukraine and claiming they are. So what they were doing, these people, was they started approaching families on Facebook and social media, Ukraine families, and saying, look, I have a house with 2 spare bedrooms. If you and the kids want to come and live with me here in Ireland, you're welcome. So they've been doing it that way. So therefore, they can verify through their social media accounts that it's a proper Ukrainian mother and her kids. They can verify and see them. So, so when they show up at the front door, it's, Babushka and her 2 babies, and not, dog is rat! Not that. And so the Irish government were furious when they found this out. Furious. And so they've been trying to make up fake stories that people who've done it, because they weren't able to smuggle, like there's a guy made a video outside Dublin Airport the other day. Classic great piece of citizen journalism. I don't know the man's name, but I've seen him before. And he interviewed the latest batch of them coming in from the Ukraine, and he said, yeah, sure enough, there's women with young kids, real refugees, had to make a run for it because it's dangerous and pretty sad. When he goes, here's some other ones, and a guy from the law department or something just tried to stop him from filming and talking to these guys, which legally he couldn't do anyway. And they're from Kashmir, and one of them was 60, an old fella, and it was like, what? So the government are furious that people have found this out, that they're smuggling in. The Irish Refugee Council and the government and the Department of Justice here are smuggling in people who are not Ukrainian in the guise of war refugees. And so they're going wise and doing it directly on Facebook, and now they're being like, how dare they, how dare they? We'll just show you that charity is a scam. Charity is pure scam. And there's always been vultures. I mean, the amount of fly-by-night charities that have popped up around this whole yellow and blue thing is just bizarre. It's like social media is just plastered in them. Now, there was a story this week, which is probably, if it had if you could twist it, it'd be on the weak and strange, but it's not. that I just stumbled upon. Have you heard about the Battle of Waterloo, right? The Battle of Waterloo was fought in, I think it was 1815, something like that, between the Anglo-Prussian Dutch Orange Nassau Alliance and Napoleon's Grand Army, the Grand Army. And Napoleon's army barely lost. It was a very, very tight battle. But the Duke of Wellington, as the commander of the Allied forces, won the day with the help of Bruckner, I think, Field Marshal Bruckner, the Prussians. But that's how good like, the Grand Army were. They could take on the Prussians, the British, and the Nassaus and actually nearly beat them. All, in one battle. But anyway, when the battle was over, there was something like 40,000 dead, or something like a colossal amount of dead. Gigantic, and the battle changed Europe forever. So, this story appeared of, they had found the body of a young man who died in Waterloo, and they had put his body on display, and it caused a skeleton on display somewhere in Brussels or in Belgium, and it caused a bit of a flurry, and the flurry. You're always being distracted. You've got to ask yourself, why are you being pulled away from? Okay, and this is how my mind works. If you want to live inside my head, this is how my mind works and always has worked. And people always say to me, where do you pick up these facts? How do you always know these things? Well, because I take an active interest in studying. But I usually study for kind of like the detective reasons, history and stuff like that, in that kind of manner. And so here, why make a big hill about, and they're trying to say, oh, it's disrespectful to the young man who died at Waterloo, putting a skeleton on display at that. So, when I was a kid growing up in Dublin, there's the Wellington Monument in the Phoenix Park. I think it's the second largest monument of its kind, Freemasonic monument in the world. It's gigantic. And all around the outside, you'll see it in my Occult Dublin documentary, are friezes of various battles that the Duke of Wellington oversaw. He was actually from Dublin. He was the Lord Wesley, and they were made from the cannons that were melted down at Waterloo. So they contained the det energy in the French cannons that were melted down and used to make these friezes. And being near them as a kid always frightened me. I was always afraid of being around them. They always made me scared and nervous. And because I used to think the statues would come to life and look at me and stuff like that, like in Jason and the Argonauts. And so it dawned on me, it said in the article that this is the only body that has ever been recovered from the Waterloo battlefield. And I think to myself, huh, what? There was 40,000 or so killed, and there's only one body ever found? And that sent me on a detective mission to find out why that was. And it's fucking gruesome. Now, this is what I'm saying. If you're eating right now, don't be eating right now. When the Battle of Waterloo ended, right, and this will really make you think about military service and stuff like, well, maybe not today, but in the past. And the bodies were strewn all over the field. They didn't bury them, and here's what happened. The first thing that happened was every single body was robbed of everything. So all their boots, their clothes, whatever money they had. The peasants in the area took everything. And so did many of the soldiers who survived, took whatever they could. Remember, things like boots were expensive. So that's what, a dead French lancer would have a nice pair of boots that would fit you, and you were a poor English or, Prussian soldier, and you had a shit pair of boots, you'd take them. Because a lot of that went on. And so but the peasants also raided the bodies. They would wait, so that happened. So there were, after the first day, every dead body on the field would be naked. And there's one report of a guy, a British corporal, who was injured, and they thought he was dead. And he had his memory of was waking up with bodies on top of him, and he crawling all naked, and he crawling out naked himself, because he was thrown with the dead bodies. Okay, and he survived. But he was naked because everything he had was robbed, taken off him. That was one thing, right? That's not too bad. I mean, what are the dead going to do with their boots and belts and stuff like that? Now, the next thing that happened was, and this is amazing, there would be dentists. This is 100% true. Were dental workers who would wait for the battle to end, and with the permission of the British or the Prussian High Command, would go around extracting the teeth from all the dead bodies. And these were prized teeth to make dentures. And the reason why they're prized teeth, well, they belong to nearly exclusively young men. So they took the teeth out of their heads. It's 40,000 by how many teeth you have in your head. That's how many teeth. And it was a big business, a big lucrative business. And Waterloo teeth, Waterloo dentures, were still in high demand 100 years after the battle. There would be advertisements in English newspapers saying, Piggle Figgles dentures, Waterloo teeth, highest quality. And people would, now just think about that. You get a pair of dentures, right? And you're eating your food that's with teeth that are, this is what I'm saying, it could nearly be on the weak and strange, with teeth that were taken from probably a dozen young men who died in battle. There's got to be some kind of magical thing going on there. Okay? Now that's bad enough. And the reason why there are no bodies is, as part of the compensation to the farmers on who the land of the battlefields the battle was fought on, the farmers were allowed to have the dead bodies. And you think to yourself, well, what did they do with the dead bodies? Some were fed to pigs. Yes, you charged into battle. For my lord, for my king of England, long live the king of England, yeah. Only to be end up eaten by a Belgian pig. Okay. Another thing they did was they would cut the heads off the farmers. They would boil the heads until the flesh fell off, then take the skulls and crush them and turn them in and sell them as fertilizer. Human skulls were considered the best fertilizer back in Victorian times, and that's why one of Ireland's biggest industries in the 1800s was exporting skulls to England, and they were used for fertilizer. But things like Waterloo became a bonanza of that. So the farmers would, this is their compensation for their land being used for battle. Says they would let them have the bodies, and they would boil the heads until the flesh fell off. And then they would smash the skulls up with hammers into a powder and sell it, and use it and sell it as fertilizer. And then the dead bodies, the same thing. They would use them to make compost. Imagine that. You're fighting for some cause, and you end up either eaten by a pig, being in some geriatric's mouth, or being used as compost or fertilizer. And also the bones would then be also used as fertilizer. That's why only one body was ever found from Waterloo. All the rest were used as agricultural products. We turned the dead into butter and bread. And they don't teach you this in school because there's no glory in it. There's no, they don't, while the aristocrats who oversaw the battle, like Wesley, Duke of Wellington, enjoyed gifts of huge tracts of land and great riches. The average soldier got his regular pay, and if he died, he was used as he was turned into dentures or fertilizer or pig food. Now that's gruesome, but that just goes to show you those people who say today, well, you're a fucking far right conspiracy theorist, the far right. You actually really believe that I'm from the dorky socialist alliance. You actually believe that the leadership of this planet would treat people in such a way? Yeah. The reason I'm a conspiracy theorist is because only one body was ever found at Waterloo. And then I dug in further and found out what was done to the rest. And if that doesn't tell you what these people think of us, nothing does. And what things like Waterloo tells you is they wouldn't think twice about Christian Morris's loyalty scheme being used in the needlecraft. They wouldn't think twice about it. And remember, the aristocrats died at Waterloo. Oh, Lord, my Lord, I'm fighting for my king and my honour. He's pig food, Well, this is the drummer from the Foo Fighter. We're not playing for anyone, man, unless he got vaccine, he got the needlecraft. Yeah, bang. We turned the dead into butter and bread. And that's why I unashamedly call myself a conspiracy theorist. Not because I'm paranoid, not because I'm stupid, quite the opposite. Because I understand and see just how fucking dark history is and how ordinary people have been treated in the past. And those who think that the same people who are still in charge today, their ancestors, their descendants, wouldn't do to us today. When you see what they did in World War I with the population reduction and everything, you're a fool. You're a fool. These are beasts. I was on Veritas Radio tonight and I said to Mel, I said, the ones running this world, I don't even think of them as human anymore. To me, they're like this evil energy force that exists beyond space-time. And you're saying, well, what about like David likes reptilians? I says, yeah, it's an analogy, it's okay, but it's beyond that. I see them as a miasma, as a gas, as something like a plasma. And it's just pure malice for the human race, and we're its farm animals. So there you go. Discovering that only one body remains from Waterloo, and then finding out the reason why and what was done to the rest of the other bodies, is the reason why I'm a conspiracy theorist. And you would be too if you read history in the same honest way I do. And this is why I've no doubt in my mind that all the most evil pathologies speculated around the transubstantiation of the needlecraft are most likely true. It is a loyalty scheme. It is an intelligence test. And those who have been forced out of through their employment or through love or coercion, and I mean real coercion, not just NPC peer pressure, but real coercion, into getting the three of them as far as the foghorn leghorn, we've got to work with these people to bring them back to our world. And the epigenetic things I really do strongly believe that's the path for them to heal from this. So don't be evil, show love. Not to the ones who mocked us and laughed at us, but those ones who were coerced into it. So there you go. Got a bit dark today, but I just have to explain to you why I am the way I am and why I'm all about the love. Because if I knew back in 1814 that that was the fate awaiting these young men at Waterloo, I would have been the first one to go around the streets of pamphlets saying, don't do it, this is what they do with your body. And the same families who are people around today, their ancestors go, far-right conspiracy theory, will be saying the same thing back then. We hope you say they crushed our heads and feed our flesh to pigs. Oh, conspiracy theorists. Sanguinosis. I fucking love you bastards more than you realise. Take care.